Good morning, boys and girls. Today I'm going to tell you the story of the robins built a nest. Now, it was early springtime and it was time for Mr. and Mrs. Robin to think about making their nest. So, Mr. Robin, he found the perfect maple tree. And there was a crotch that was low enough for them to get into, and he thought it was just the perfect place for them to build their nest. Now, Mrs. Robin, she had already began surveying the area. She found this beautiful fence that she thought would be a perfect place to build their nest, and she was thinking about putting it on the second railing of the fence. She thought this was a great idea because it was high enough off the ground to stay dry. It wasn't too high, so when the little birds were learning how to fly, they wouldn't fall off and hurt themselves. The fence color was also the perfect color for the area because it matched the trees and the leaves and the stick. And she thought that they could build a nest that would blend in pretty well to the fence. Mr. Squirrel, the red squirrel, was in the area, and she was not very fond of him because last spring she had been married before, and she had had a nest there too, in the area too. And if it wasn't for Mr. Squirrel, the red squirrel, she would have children now that were almost the same size as her. So she thought all these reasons were a great reason for why they should have the nest there. Not only that, but the first rung also offered a little protection from rain so the nest wouldn't get wet. So she told Mr. Robin about her plan, but he had already made his mind up. He wanted to have the nest in the tree, and he already even began to work on it. He told her, "My breast feathers are the brightest, so I will make the decision to have the nest in the tree." In the bird family, whoever has the brightest breast feathers is the one who makes the decisions. So Mrs. Robin didn't say anything, and she happily got to work on the nest in the tree. As they started working, Mrs. Robin said, "We're going to need so much mud to fill this crotch up so that we have room for our nest." But Mr. Robin didn't pay attention. He just kept working. He would bring back sticks and leaves and grass from around the area, but Mrs. Robin said, "These leaves and sticks do not match the tree. They stick out too much. We need to find leaves and sticks and grass that matches the area." So Mr. Robin kept on working. And as he was working, he noticed that it looked like it was going to rain soon. And it did. And the rain was so heavy and so thick, it felt almost as pebbles. So Mr. and Mrs. Robin took cover. And when the rain was gone, they realized that they saw that the nest was all washed away. So Mrs. Robin said, "I think your idea about finding a new place for the nest was a great idea." And Mr. Robin didn't remember saying this, but he didn't want to seem like he was forgetful. So he agreed. He said, "You know what? That is true. I was right. We should find a new spot for our nest. There's so many areas around." And she said, "Yeah, there is so many areas around. I just don't know." And Mr. Robin said, "What about this second rung on this fence over here?" And Mrs. Robin said, knowing that was her fence that she wanted originally, she said, "Okay, I guess that will do." So they happily began to make their fence or make their nest. And they built a beautiful nest that was very secure and very um, sturdy. And Mr. Robin was so proud of his nest and of his wife. And he brought this beautiful piece of cotton to put on the outside of the nest to just make it even more beautiful. And one day he was talking to Mr. Goldfish, and he said, "My wife and my nest are just so lovely. When we were building our nest, I had to change the plans on our nest, and my wife was just as good natured as could be." And Mrs. Robin, hearing this, agreed and said, "Yes, I was such good natured to Mrs. Goldfish." And she gave her a wink, and they giggled. And that is the story of the robins build a nest.